I never meant to look through James's phone. After 12 years of marriage, I trusted him completely, or at least I thought I did. It was a Tuesday evening in April when everything changed. The kids were asleep, and I was folding laundry while watching that crime drama we both loved. James had fallen asleep on the couch, his phone buzzing persistently beside him. At first, I ignored it. Then curiosity got the better of me when I saw a woman's name flash across the screen. Melissa. I didn't know any Melissa. The message preview showed just enough. I miss you too. When can we... My hands trembled as I picked up his phone. I'd never been the snooping type, but something in my gut told me this wasn't innocent. His password was our anniversary, 061429, a date that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else's life. I scrolled through months of messages between them. Lunch dates, inside jokes, photos, plans for a weekend getaway. Each message was a knife twisting deeper into my chest. "You're my escape," he'd written to her just yesterday. "Being with you makes me feel alive again." The room started spinning. I sat down on the floor, still clutching his phone, my mind racing through every late night at the office, every business trip, every time he'd been distant or distracted. How many lies had I swallowed without question? How many times had I made excuses for him in my head? I looked over at James, sleeping peacefully, his face relaxed and unburdened by the double life he'd been leading. This man who'd promised to love and cherish me, who'd held my hand through 2 difficult pregnancies, who'd built a life with me in our little suburban home with the blue shutters and the vegetable garden I'd planted last spring. This man was a stranger to me now. I didn't wake him. I didn't scream or throw things like they do in movies. Instead, I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. Then I deleted the screenshots from his phone, put it back exactly where it had been, and continued folding laundry. I folded his favorite blue shirt with extra care, smoothing out the wrinkles as tears silently rolled down my cheeks. That night, I lay awake beside him, studying the ceiling and listening to his familiar snoring pattern. My mind raced through our entire relationship, re-examining every memory, every anniversary, every family vacation. Had it all been a lie? Or just parts of it? I wondered if our children, Emma and Liam, 9 and 7, had somehow sensed the falseness between us. Children always know more than we give them credit for. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't confront him immediately. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out what this meant for our future. I needed to protect myself and the kids, emotionally and financially. So I kissed him goodbye as he left for work, like nothing had changed. I packed lunches and dropped the kids at school, smiling and waving to the other mothers who had no idea my world had just collapsed. When I got home, I sat at our kitchen table, the one we'd picked out together at that little antique shop in Vermont, and made a list. Bank accounts, credit cards, property deeds, insurance policies. Our entire married life reduced to assets and liabilities on a yellow legal pad. It felt cold and clinical, but it was the only way I could process what was happening without falling apart completely. As I wrote, I realized something else. I'd lost myself somewhere along the way. I'd become James's wife, Emma and Liam's mother, but Sarah, the woman who once had dreams of opening her own bookstore, who wrote poetry late at night, who loved hiking alone in the mountains, she had faded away so gradually I hadn't even noticed her disappearance. 3 weeks passed in a fog of pretending. I made breakfasts and dinners, attended Emma's soccer games and Liam's piano recital, smiled at appropriate moments during conversations with James. I became an actress in my own life, playing the role of contented wife while gathering information, consulting with a lawyer, and opening a separate bank account. Each night, I'd wait until James fell asleep before slipping downstairs to the basement where I'd hidden the growing folder of evidence and plans. My sister Kate was the only one who knew. I called her the day after discovering the messages, my voice breaking as I tried to explain. She lived 4 hours away in Boston, but drove down that weekend, telling James she was just in the neighborhood. We went shopping, an excuse to talk privately. "You know what hurts the most?" I told her, as we pretended to browse through dresses at Nordstrom. "It's not even the betrayal. It's that I've spent 12 years putting his needs first, making his favorite meals, rearranging my schedule for his career moves, and he couldn't even be bothered to change his phone password." Kate squeezed my hand. That's not just carelessness, Sarah. That's arrogance. He never thought you'd look. She was right. James had grown comfortable in his deception, confident in my trustworthiness, or perhaps in what he perceived as my naivety. The thought made my blood boil. That evening, Kate helped me start a resume. I'd been an English literature professor before Emma was born, but had given up my position to raise our children while James pursued his career in finance. 10 years out of academia, my CV looked like a relic from another life. What about the bookstore idea? Kate suggested. You've always wanted that. The dream I'd abandoned surfaced like a forgotten melody. Before I met James, I'd worked at a small independent bookstore while saving money to open my own someday. I'd had a business plan, researched locations, even started collecting vintage shelving. Then came love, marriage, pregnancy, and somewhere along the way, I convinced myself it was an impractical fantasy. Alone in our home office the next day, I pulled up the old business plan from a dusty external hard drive. Reading it was like meeting a more confident version of myself, someone with ambition and vision. I spent hours updating it, researching current market conditions for independent bookstores, looking at retail spaces in nearby towns. For the first time since finding those messages, I felt something besides pain, possibility. I also started therapy. Dr. Mitchell, a compassionate woman with silver-streaked hair, helped me navigate the crushing waves of emotion. Anger that left me gasping for breath, grief that hollowed me out, fear that paralyzed me at 3 a.m. You're grieving 2 losses, she explained. The relationship you thought you had, and the future you planned together. During our 4th session, she asked a question that stopped me cold. What would you do if you weren't afraid? The answer came immediately. I would leave. I would start over. I would reclaim my life without James's betrayal casting shadows over everything. But the logistics terrified me. Where would we live? How would I support Emma and Liam? What would this do to them? I'd grown up with divorced parents who could barely be in the same room, and I'd sworn I'd never put my own children through that pain. Dr. Mitchell helped me see that staying in a marriage fractured by lies would hurt them more in the long run. Children don't need perfect parents, she said. They need authentic ones. Meanwhile, James remained oblivious to my inner transformation. He continued his pattern of late nights and distracted conversations, occasionally bringing home flowers or suggesting date nights. Gestures that once would have warmed my heart, but now felt like cheap currency meant to pay off an enormous debt. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, he noticed me looking at him. What? He asked, smiling that crooked smile I'd once found irresistible. Nothing, I replied. Just thinking. About what? About how I don't know you anymore. About how every word from your mouth makes me question whether it's truth or fiction. About how I'm planning my escape from this beautiful prison we built together. Just wondering what kind of person I want to be, I said instead. He laughed, kissed my forehead, and turned out the light, never suspecting that my words were the most honest thing I'd said to him in weeks. The annual dinner party at the Hendersons was an event I usually dreaded. Hours of small talk with James's colleagues and their perfectly coiffed wives discussing vacation homes and private schools. This year, however, I approached it with unusual calm. Perhaps because I knew it would be the last one I'd attend as James's wife. I chose a red dress I'd bought years ago but never worn. James had always preferred me in pastels and neutrals. You look different, he commented as I fastened my earrings. Do you like it? I asked, watching his reflection in the mirror. It's a bit much for the Hendersons, don't you think? I smiled. I like it. That's enough for me. His eyebrows raised slightly, but he said nothing more. The party was in full swing when we arrived. Crystal glasses clinked. Laughter echoed across marble floors, and the scent of expensive perfume mingled with that of catered hors d'oeuvres. I accepted a glass of champagne and moved through the crowd with newfound confidence, engaging in conversations I would have normally avoided. Sarah, we never see you at these things, said Richard Henderson, clapping James on the shoulder. She's usually home with the kids, right, James? Someone has to be the responsible one, James replied with a wink that made my skin crawl. I took a sip of champagne. Actually, Emma and Liam are with my sister tonight. She's staying with us for a while. James looked at me sharply. Kate had left 3 weeks ago, but I'd managed to conceal my preparations with her continued visits. The evening progressed predictably until dinner was served. 12 of us sat around an elaborately decorated table, discussing politics and market trends, subjects where the men dominated while wives nodded supportively. I remained unusually quiet, observing James in his element, charming and authoritative. Then Michelle Henderson mentioned her new book club. "Sarah, you'd love it. We're reading that new novel everyone's talking about. The one about the woman who discovers her husband's affair and reinvents herself?" I asked innocently. "I just finished it." A silence fell over the table. James cleared his throat and reached for his wine. "What did you think of it?" Michelle pressed. "I found it surprisingly realistic," I said, meeting James's eyes across the table. "The way she describes the systematic dismantling of a woman's confidence, how the husband creates this alternate reality where his betrayal is somehow justified." The table shifted uncomfortably. "Sounds depressing," someone muttered. "Actually, it's quite empowering by the end," I continued. "She rebuilds her life, opens her own business, finds herself again." James's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it discreetly, but not discreetly enough. I saw the momentary flash of panic in his eyes, followed by practiced neutrality. "Excuse me," he said, standing. "Work call." As he stepped away, I felt a surge of clarity. This man who couldn't even sit through dinner without connecting with his other life didn't deserve another minute of mine. When he returned, the conversation had moved on to summer vacation plans. I listened as couples discussed shared futures, cruises to the Mediterranean, renting houses in the Hamptons, futures that James and I would never share. During dessert, his phone buzzed again. This time, he ignored it, but I saw him fidgeting, eager to check it. I reached for my purse beneath the table and found my own phone. With steady fingers, I typed out a text and sent it to his number. His phone buzzed once more. He apologized to the table and pulled it out, then froze as he read my message. "I know about Melissa. I've known for weeks." Our eyes met across crystal and candlelight, his face drained of color. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, I felt powerful. I took a deliberately slow bite of chocolate mousse, maintaining eye contact. He excused himself again, this time motioning for me to follow. I smiled politely at our dinner companions. "Please start the coffee without us." In the hallway outside the dining room, James grabbed my arm. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed. "Taking back control of my narrative," I replied calmly, removing his hand from my arm. "I've seen the messages, James. I've talked to a lawyer. I've made plans." "You went through my phone?" His indignation was almost comical. "That's an invasion of privacy. Is that really the violation you want to focus on right now?" His expression cycled through shock, anger, and finally calculation. "Look, it's not what you think. Melissa is just—" "Save it," I interrupted. "I'm not interested in explanations or excuses. I just wanted you to know that I know, and that by this time next week, I'll be gone." "Gone? What about the kids? Our home? You can't just walk away from 12 years. I'm not walking away from our children. I'm walking away from you. There's a difference." The door to the dining room opened, and Michelle Henderson peered out. "Everything okay out here?" "We're serving coffee." James composed himself instantly, professional mask sliding back into place. "Everything's fine. Sarah just needed some air." I smiled at Michelle. "Actually, I need to get home. Kate just texted that Liam's running a fever." The lie came easily. As we made our excuses and gathered our things, James maintained perfect composure, thanking our hosts, promising to reschedule, playing the concerned father. In the car, however, his facade crumbled. "You can't do this," he said, knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You're overreacting. It was just a fling. It didn't mean anything." I stared out the window at passing streetlights. "That's the saddest part, James. You threw away our family for something that didn't mean anything." The drive home from the Hendersons was 17 minutes of suffocating silence. James stared straight ahead, his profile illuminated by occasional streetlights, a stranger wearing my husband's face. I watched raindrops race across my window, wondering which ones would reach the bottom first, a childish game to distract myself from the hurricane brewing beside me. We didn't speak until we reached our driveway. James killed the engine but made no move to exit the car. "How long have you been planning this?" he finally asked, his voice uncharacteristically small. "Since the moment I saw her messages." I kept my eyes forward, afraid that looking at him might weaken my resolve. 3 weeks? 2 days? He exhaled slowly. "And you've just been... what?" "Pretending everything's normal while plotting behind my back." The irony nearly made me laugh. "That's rich coming from you." Inside, Kate was curled up on our sofa reading, the soft lamp casting shadows across the living room we'd decorated together over countless weekends. She looked up, registering the tension immediately. "How's Liam?" I asked, maintaining the fiction I'd created at the dinner party. She caught on instantly. "Fever broke about an hour ago. He's sleeping now." James stood awkwardly in the entryway, clearly uncomfortable with Kate's presence. "I'm going to check on the kids," he muttered, disappearing upstairs. The moment he was gone, Kate was at my side. "What happened?" I told him I know, at the Hendersons. My voice sounded oddly detached, as if belonging to someone else. "Jesus, Sarah, in the middle of dinner?" It felt right in the moment. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "Can you stay downstairs for a bit? I need to talk to him alone, but I don't want him to try convincing me to let him stay." Kate squeezed my hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Upstairs, I found James sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at a framed photo of our wedding day. The sight pierced me, not because I missed what we had, but because I mourned what I'd thought we had. "They were sleeping so peacefully," he said without looking up. "Do they have any idea their mother is about to blow up their world?" My temper flared. "Don't you dare put this on me. You blew up their world the moment you decided our marriage vows were optional." "It was a mistake," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "A stupid, meaningless mistake that I've been trying to end." "End?" I raised an eyebrow. "The texts I saw were from last week." He flinched. "It's complicated." "No, James, it's actually very simple. You lied. Repeatedly. For months. Maybe years?" I studied his face, searching for some remnant of the man I'd trusted. "How long has it been going on? And don't lie to me again." He looked away. 8 months. 8 months. Nearly a year of deception. I calculated backward. It would have started around the time I'd been caring for my mother after her hip surgery, exhausted from splitting my time between her needs and the children's. "Who is she?" "New client acquisition specialist at the firm." His voice was flat. "It doesn't matter who she is. It matters to me." I moved to the closet and pulled out the suitcase I'd hidden in the back corner weeks ago, already half packed. James stood abruptly. "What are you doing?" "Finishing what I started." I grabbed clothes from drawers. Practical items, nothing sentimental. "You're sleeping in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow we'll tell the kids together that you and I are taking some time apart. I've already found a short-term rental near Kate's in Boston. We're leaving tomorrow afternoon." "You can't take my children to Boston." His voice rose, panic replacing shock. "They're our children and I'm not taking them from you permanently. But I need space to think, and they need stability. They can stay with me while school's out for summer, and we'll figure out a more permanent arrangement later." My voice was steady, my movements methodical. "I've spoken to a lawyer. You'll be receiving papers next week." James ran his hands through his hair, desperation etched on his face. "Sarah, please. We can work through this. Go to counseling. Start over." I paused, a stack of folded sweaters in my hands. "Do you love her?" His hesitation was answer enough. You don't get to destroy something, and then decide you want it back when losing it becomes inconvenient, I said quietly, placing the sweaters in my suitcase. "I deserve better than being your safety net. What about what the kids deserve? A whole family?" I zipped the suitcase closed with finality. They deserve parents who model honesty and self-respect. I'm finally giving them that. Later, after James retreated to the guest room, I lay awake in our bed for the last time. The ceiling I'd stared at for thousands of nights looked different somehow, less confining. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, nature's percussion accompanying the collapse of my married life. But beneath the grief and anger, a tiny spark glowed. Not happiness, not yet, but possibility. The possibility of becoming someone new from the ashes of who I'd been. Boston greeted us with a heat wave. The rental apartment, a second-floor walk-up in a brownstone near Kate's place in Cambridge, trapped the July heat like an oven. The window air conditioning units wheezed and sputtered, but barely made a dent in the oppressive warmth. Still, it was ours. Mine. Telling Emma and Liam had been as painful as I'd anticipated. Emma, at 9, understood more than she let on. Her solemn eyes tracked between James and me as we explained that sometimes grown-ups need space to figure things out. Liam, just 7, asked practical questions. Would he still have his dinosaur sheets? Could we get a dog now? Did Daddy not love us anymore? That last question had cracked something in James. I will always, always love you, he'd said, gathering both children into his arms, his eyes meeting mine over their heads. I'd looked away, unable to bear the plea in his gaze. Now, 3 weeks into our Boston life, I was finding my footing. Kate had connected me with an old college friend who owned a bookstore in Davis Square. Elaine needed part-time help and didn't mind if I brought the kids along during summer break. It wasn't much money, but combined with the temporary support arrangement my lawyer had worked out with James, it was enough to keep us afloat while I figured out my next steps. The kids were adapting better than I'd expected. Emma had befriended the daughter of the first-floor tenant, a quiet girl named Zoe who shared her love of astronomy. Liam had discovered the joy of Boston's splash parks and the public library's extensive dinosaur book collection. They spoke to James every evening by video chat, conversations that I orchestrated from a careful distance, close enough to supervise but far enough to give them privacy. It was the nights that were hardest. After tucking the children into beds in the room they shared, larger than I'd expected but still cramped with 2 twin beds and their scattered possessions, I'd retreat to the tiny living room with its view of a brick wall across the alley. In those quiet hours, doubt would creep in. Had I overreacted? Should I have tried harder to save our marriage? Was I punishing the children for James's mistakes? Then, I'd remember the text messages, the calculated deception, the months of lies, and my resolve would harden again. One muggy Thursday, as I shelved new arrivals at the bookstore, Elaine approached with a cup of tea. "You've got that 1,000-yard stare again," she said, pushing the mug into my hands. "Penny for your thoughts?" I smiled weakly, just wondering if I made the right choice. "The one where you refused to be disrespected by a man who couldn't keep his promises?" She raised an eyebrow. "That one? When you put it that way." "Look," she said, leaning against the bookshelf. "My ex cheated on me after 18 years of marriage. I took him back. Twice. Know what it got me? 3 more years of wondering when it would happen again, jumping every time his phone dinged, making myself smaller to keep him interested." She shook her head. "The day I finally left for good was the first day I could breathe again." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Despite the stress and uncertainty of our new situation, I hadn't realized how much energy I'd been expending monitoring James's behavior, analyzing his moods, anticipating his needs. There was a strange lightness in being responsible only for myself and the children. That weekend, I took Emma and Liam to a small street fair in Cambridge. We wandered among stalls selling handmade jewelry and local honey, ate overpriced ice cream that melted faster than we could lick it, and listened to a folk band playing beneath a canopy of maple trees. As the children danced to the music, their faces flushed with joy and sugar, a man approached me. "Your kids are having a blast," he said, smiling. He was tall with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "They deserve some fun," I replied. "It's been a challenging summer." He nodded as if he understood perfectly. "I'm Michael. I run the used book stall over there." He gestured to a table piled with paperbacks. "Couldn't help noticing your daughter's t-shirt." I looked at Emma, who wore a faded shirt, emblazoned with so many books, so little time. "Are you a reader too?" he asked. "I work at the Bookmark in Davis Square," I said. "And yes, I've been a reader since before I could actually read." His face lit up. "Elaine's place? She's an old friend." Small world. Something warm flickered in my chest. Not attraction exactly, but a reminder that the world was full of connections waiting to be discovered. We chatted about books while the children explored his stall, Emma emerging triumphantly with a dog-eared copy of A Wrinkle in Time that Michael insisted on giving her for free. As we walked home, Liam's sticky hand in mine, and Emma clutching her literary treasure. I realized I'd spent an entire hour not thinking about James or our failed marriage. It was a small victory, but significant. Proof that healing wasn't just a distant possibility, but a process already underway. That night, after the children were asleep, I opened my laptop and began writing. Not the business plan I'd been tinkering with, but something more personal. Words flowed like a river breaking through ice, carrying away pieces of pain and confusion, leaving clarity in their wake. I wrote about betrayal and resilience, about the strange geography of grief, about the unexpected freedom found in starting over. It wasn't until my fingers finally stilled on the keyboard that I realized I'd written the first chapter of what might become a book. Not the great American novel, or even something meant for others' eyes, but a testament to survival. My story, told in my voice. Autumn came to Boston with spectacular force, leaves blazing red and gold against cobalt skies, mornings crisp enough to see your breath. The children had settled into their new schools, making friends and adjusting to routines. Emma joined the science club, while Liam discovered a talent for soccer that surprised us all. Our little apartment felt more like home now, decorated with their artwork and weekend flea market finds. I'd increased my hours at the bookstore as Elaine prepared for the holiday rush, learning the business from the ground up, inventory systems, ordering processes, the delicate art of book recommendations. On quiet afternoons, I'd share my bookstore dreams with her, and she'd offer practical advice drawn from 20 years of independent bookselling. Location is everything, she'd say, circling areas on a map where she thought a new store might thrive. And you need a niche, something that sets you apart. The divorce proceedings were moving forward. James had initially contested, hiring an aggressive attorney who sent threatening letters about my parental kidnapping. But after a tense mediation session where I presented printouts of the text messages and evidence of his ongoing relationship with Melissa, he'd become more cooperative. We were working toward joint custody, with the children spending school years with me and summers with him, plus alternate holidays and weekend visits. I'd started therapy again, this time with Dr. Coleman, a divorce specialist who helped me navigate the complex emotions of ending a 12-year marriage. Recovery isn't linear, she reminded me often. There will be setbacks, days when you miss what you had. That doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. She was right. Some mornings I'd wake up reaching for James's warmth, momentarily forgetting everything that had happened. Some evenings, helping Liam with his math homework, always James's domain, I'd feel a stab of doubt. Had I been too hasty? Too unforgiving? Then I'd remember Melissa's texts on his phone, his hesitation when I asked if he loved her, the months of lies, and the doubt would recede like a tide going out. October brought parent-teacher conferences at the children's new school. I arrived early, nervously smoothing my skirt as I waited outside Emma's classroom. These were the kinds of events James and I had always attended together, presenting a united front as we discussed our children's progress. Mrs. Reynolds? Emma's teacher appeared in the doorway. "We're ready for you." I smiled, not bothering to correct her about my name. I'd kept Reynolds for the children's sake, though I sometimes thought about reclaiming my maiden name, Parker. The conference went well. Emma was thriving academically, though her teacher noted she could be withdrawn socially. Completely understandable given the recent changes in her life, she assured me. She's resilient. Give her time. As I was leaving Emma's classroom, heading toward Liam's, a familiar voice stopped me cold. "Sarah." I turned slowly. James stood in the hallway, looking both out of place and exactly where he belonged. He'd lost weight, and his usually impeccable appearance seemed slightly rumpled, tie askew, hair a bit too long. "What are you doing here?" I managed, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I had business in Boston. Thought I'd surprise the kids." He shifted uncomfortably. "I called the school yesterday to arrange it. No one had thought to inform me." I swallowed my irritation. This wasn't the place for a confrontation. "Liam's conference is next. You can join if you want." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you." We sat side by side in tiny chairs, knees nearly touching, as Liam's teacher praised his enthusiasm and gentle nature. James asked thoughtful questions, took notes, behaved exactly like the engaged father he'd always been. It was jarring to reconcile this man, who knew Liam's reading level and remembered Emma's science fair project deadline, with the one who had systematically betrayed our family. Afterward, we walked silently to the parking lot. "Can I see them?" he asked. "I'm staying at the Marriott downtown. I could take them for dinner." I hesitated. It wasn't his scheduled weekend, but the children would be thrilled. "They'll be home from after-school programs at 5. You can come by then." He nodded, then looked at me properly for the first time. "You look good, Sarah." "Happy." The comment caught me off guard. Was I happy? Not completely, not yet. But I was something. Stronger, perhaps. More myself. "I'm getting there," I replied honestly. That evening, watching James leave with our excited children, I felt a strange sense of closure. Not forgiveness, I wasn't there yet, but acceptance that this was our new reality. Co-parents rather than partners. Two separate lives intersecting only where our children were concerned. After they left, I pulled out my laptop and opened the document I'd been working on almost daily. Part memoir, part self-help book for women rebuilding after betrayal. I'd shown a few chapters to Elaine, who'd connected me with a friend in publishing. "There's something here," the friend had said. "Keep going." I typed the day's events, exploring the complicated emotions of seeing James again. As I wrote, a notification popped up, an email from a commercial real estate agent I'd contacted weeks ago. Available immediately. Former cafe space, Newton Center, excellent foot traffic, below market rent. My heart raced as I clicked through the attached photos. Large windows flooding the space with natural light. Built-in shelves along one wall. A small loft area perfect for children's story time. It was everything I'd described to Elaine, and miraculously within my budget, especially if I used part of the settlement money I'd received when we sold our suburban home. Before I could talk myself out of it, I replied to the agent requesting a viewing the next day. When the children returned from dinner with James, bubbling with stories and carrying ice cream cake for me, I hugged them tightly, inhaling their familiar scents. Liam's grape shampoo, Emma's watermelon lip gloss. Dad said he might move to Boston, Emma announced, watching my face carefully. Not right away, but maybe next year. The news should have unsettled me, but instead I felt oddly calm. Whatever James decided, I was building something of my own now, a life shaped by my choices rather than his actions. "That would be nice for you two," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, James was a good father. The children deserved his presence in their lives. After they went to bed, I stood at our apartment window, gazing at the city lights. Tomorrow I would visit a potential bookstore space. Next week, I had a meeting with a literary agent interested in my manuscript. The future stretched before me. Not the one I'd planned, but one I was creating day by day, brick by brick. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to imagine what happiness might look like on the other side of heartbreak. Not a happiness dependent on someone else's fidelity or approval, but something sturdier, built from within.